Hey, it's Veterans Day 2019, and I just wanted to share a story with you. Yesterday, I left church and I was eating at Wendy's with my cousin, and another fellow from our church was there at a table with some friends of his, and he had heard my testimony, my story, the story that God's given me, and he was trying to share that with the people at his table. And then he asked me to share it myself, and I don't. God's given me such an incredible life in general, but an incredible story to share with people. And I say that He's given it to me because it's not my story. I really have very little to do with it. He has everything to do with it, and so I wanted to share that with you guys today. Hopefully that you can find the true character of God through this story, that you can be inspired or have a hunger that's created in you to pursue Him, to pursue God. And so hope that you'll stick with me as I share this today, okay? So when I was a young man, I grew up in church. I grew up in a Christian church, Baptist church. And, when you grow up in church and you try and, live right, you try and obey the rules, you try and honor your mother and your father, you try and, and live a Christian life, right? And that's who I was. I went to church camps and Christian concerts and all kinds of things when I was young. And then, I got saved when I was 9 years old. And I said a prayer in our living room. And from that point on, I assumed that I wouldn't go to hell. And that's really why I said that prayer, is because I didn't want to go to hell. I wanted to go to heaven. It's kind of a selfish reason, right? But as I got older, I started to question things. I became more skeptical of what I believed. A lot of people in high school wanted to challenge those things. And to be honest with you, I didn't see a whole lot of evidence in my life, or in just in life in general, of a good and loving God. And so I was fairly critical of God. I remember, I don't really remember where I heard it, but as a young man, I remember hearing the greatest commandment talked about. And the greatest commandment, it comes out of Deuteronomy in the Old Testament, and then Jesus repeats this in 3 of the Gospels. And so when asked, Jesus responds, what's the greatest commandment? He's asked this. He responds, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, all your strength. And I remember my response to that was, why should I? If I commanded you to love me, your response is be like, that's not how this works. It's not how any of this works. You don't just command someone to love you. You have to earn it, or there has to be a reason, right? Love is something that it grows, it develops. It's not something that's commanded and obeyed. Forgive me, I've had a cold I've been fighting off. So, in my skepticism, I didn't walk away from trying to live a righteous life and trying to be a good Christian kid, but I did lose any desire to seek the truth in that aspect, to follow God, to put really any direction in my life towards God. So I was just trying to exist and find purpose and meaning. And of course, as a teenager, that's a trying time for the mind and soul. So I was seeking purpose, and I joined the military. And I guess I never was the cool kid. I've always been a misfit, and I'm still okay with that. But being a misfit, I guess I wanted some significance. some purpose, some meaning into my life. And so I joined the military, and I joined the Army, and I joined the infantry. And so for any of you that might not know, the infantry are the ones that do the fighting on the ground. So I thought that if there was anything in the military to do, that was it. That's where the most honor and glory and purpose is. So I joined, and and through that, there's many achievements a guy can make. Behind me there's a shadow box with medals. It's basically your awards that you get when you achieve certain things or go certain places. I guess I did find pride. I did find some purpose in that. I found a bigger purpose, being a part of a team whose goal is to protect others and serve country. I don't regret that decision. But when I made that decision, I made it selfishly. So eventually in my time in the military, I deployed to Iraq for combat operations. And in that deployment, I found myself surrounded by two enemies. I found myself surrounded by the enemies that we were to fight, that we were to face, that we were to defeat. Some people call it radical Islam. I would just say that they are faithful, not radical, to their religion, to their faith. So we were facing an enemy there that wanted to kill us because of who we are, where we're from, and what we believe, or even what we don't believe. And first day in country that we went out on right seat rides with 10th Mountain Division. We're getting ready to take over their area of operations, their AO. I remember sitting in the Humvee driving through Abu Ghraib around Baghdad, and the enemy was firing mortars at us, and they were walking the men through the field, and they were hitting in the field next to us as we were driving down this road. And we're hearing the stories of all the people that they've lost, the areas that they considered too dangerous to even patrol. And I just, for the first time, I'm going, wow, these, they really want to kill us. And that's an eye-opening time. They want to kill you, but it's not until you're actually attacked that you realize that this is real. This is, there's no take-backs on this. So there's that enemy, and then at the same time, the guys that I served with, out of an entire battalion of infantry guys, I think I knew of 2 Christians in that group. And I wasn't on the same schedule as those guys. I didn't get to spend a whole lot of time with them. And on that deployment, as far as church goes, it was 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we were going after our physical enemy hard and giving them no room to breathe. And so we didn't have any time to breathe ourselves. I didn't have any time to try and go and see the chaplain or spend time in a service or any of that. So during this time, the guys that I'm with, they're not Christian, and I'm still trying to maintain my reputation as a good Christian guy. Even though my faith is pretty weak, I'm just trying to maintain my reputation as a good guy. I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, didn't cuss, tell dirty jokes. I didn't go to the strip clubs with these guys when we were in garrison. I didn't do those things because I was trying to maintain my reputation. And those guys, most of them, criticized me pretty hard for that. They would challenge my faith daily. They would ask me as many hard questions as they could find. They watched me like a hawk waiting for me to fail. And most of them set out to make it their goal to get me to sin, to mess up, to do the things that I said I wouldn't do. And they found great pleasure in that. But I didn't. And it was a really very hard time for me. So I was facing a real enemy, earthly enemy, was trying to kill me, and I was facing a spiritual enemy. The guys I'm supposed to serve with were daily attacking my faith, daily attacking my values, and who I was. So I was pretty beaten down. I didn't have any family. I didn't have any friends. I didn't have any church to be a part of. And so as I'm in Iraq, I walk by the chaplain's office. It's basically a storage shed that they would have some services in. And I never got to go because of my schedule, but there was a table outside with Bibles on it. And so as I walked by, there was a little Bible that was, it had a metal cover, and it would fit in my cargo pocket. And I picked that Bible up, and I took it with me, and I began to read it. Now, I've always had a Bible, but I didn't read it. When I did read it, it was one of those, you just turn to the page, put your finger down, and go, okay, what's this say? And then you'd read it, and you go, well, that didn't make any sense. And then you'd put it up. Or you'd use it at church, and same thing. Okay, well, I walk away and still didn't apply anything to my life. But now I was reading the Bible. I was seeking God because there was no comfort. There was no peace. There was no joy. There was a time where I truly needed help. In our comfort, we drowned out the voice of God. C.S. Lewis says that in our we hear God whispers in our comfort, but he shouts in our pain. It's God's megaphone to a deaf world. And that's absolutely true. And so in my struggles, in my pain, in my suffering, I pursued God. And I picked up a Bible and I started to read it. And I read it from the very beginning to the very end. And as I read it, I started to learn who God was. And he started to speak to me, and he started to change my life. Started to change the way that I interacted with other people. Because before this, when the guys would criticize me, attack me, or tempt me, my response was anger or just to go hide. Go lock myself in my room or go somewhere where they were not, and just to stay away from them. But God started to transform my life. And so for their questions, I began to have answers. For their the temptations, I had a defense. And I started to know God. There's a character in the Bible named Matthew, and when Jesus comes to him, he's living in sin. He's a tax collector, he's a traitor to his own people, scum of society, everyone hates him. He's a Jew, but he works for the Roman government, and he takes money from the Jews, lines his own pockets, and gives the rest to an invader. So they do not like him. But Jesus walks up to him at his tax collector booth, and he says, Matthew, follow me. He doesn't say, Matthew, love me. He doesn't say, Matthew, get rid of all your sin and all these things, and then you can come follow me. He doesn't say, repent and burn in hell. He says, follow me. And so Matthew says, it's got to be better than what I'm doing. So he starts to follow. As he starts to follow, he begins to know Jesus. As he begins to know Jesus, he begins to love Jesus. As he begins to love Jesus, he begins to obey Jesus. And this is the progression that each of us has to go through. We have to make this decision to follow. And through that, we begin to know, we begin to love, and we begin to obey. Because obedience comes out of love. If you love someone, you want to serve them. You want to make them happy. You want to bring them joy. Because bringing them joy brings you joy. And so God was getting a hold of me while I was reading his word, while I was reading the Bible, and he started to develop not only a knowledge of him, but also a love for him. And so when that greatest commandment came to mind now, when it says, the greatest commandment is love the Lord your God, I'm going, how could I not? Because I see him for who he is, because he's shared his word with me. He shared his character with me through the Bible, and I begin to see this. And so as I'm pursuing him through prayer and the Bible, see, it took me pursuing him. It wasn't, before it was just me going, God, prove you exist. God, prove you are good. God, prove that, you love me. And now I'm going, God, I need you. Let me find out who you are. And as I sought after him, he revealed himself to me. He says, seek and you'll find. Knock and the door will be open. Ask and he'll answer, right? So God's showing himself to me. He's transforming my life. I'm starting to interact differently with the people around me, even my enemies, even the people who want to kill me. I start to see them, and I don't see them as evil. I see them as influenced by evil. And so they are fighting a spiritual war that they're losing because they don't know Christ. And so it changed my perspective of them. So I didn't hate them any longer. Instead, God had created a love for them in my heart. I still had a job to do. I still had to defend the people around me. And, it is what it is. But I didn't look at them the way that I had previously. As this is going on, I'm leading every patrol every single day. For a year, I was in the very lead of every patrol. We would go out in 4 Humvees. Most of the time they're Humvees. And I didn't. When I say I led, I wasn't in charge, but I did lead. I was in the very front every day. And so I would be in the lead Humvee, and I would be driving to wherever we were going each day to put in sniper positions and observation posts and whatever we were doing for that day. We would stop and do foot patrols and traffic control points and different things. And every other day, it seemed like literally every other day, one of our trucks would hit an IED, improvised explosive device, and it would disable one of the trucks. And we were always lucky; they were usually small enough, or the armor was strong enough that no one would really get seriously injured. But it was never my truck. I would drive right over an IED, pressure detonated, or drive right by a radio detonated IED, and it would never go off on my truck in the very front. And if it makes any sense to anyone, if you're going to stop a patrol, you'd want to hit the lead and maybe the rear truck, and that stops everything, right? But I never got hit. And so the guys would joke about Gifford's got angels in his truck. Okay, well, that's my last name. Gifford's got angels in his truck. And I would kind of laugh it off, but as I started to look at things, I'm going, man, God is protecting me. And it was so much so that these guys actually wanted to be wherever I was. They would joke about it, but they really wanted to be with me because they knew I never got hit. So for an entire year of combat operations, I never got hit, and which is just an amazing thing to me, to see all the IEDs and all the explosions and never actually have to suffer through one. I'm extremely blessed. It's nothing that I did. And this was where the channel's humble vet comes from. It's not about me. It's not about any of my achievements or what I've been through or who I am. It's about what God's done for me. So if anything, maybe it should be humbled vet, because God is as I look at my life and I look at the things that God has done, He did it all. I didn't have really anything to do with it. I was just there and I got to take part in it. And so I'm extremely blessed by God through His hand of protection and through the things that He has done in my life to show me who He is. As this it goes on for an entire year, eventually we get sent off to what we really bothered us. We got attached to the 2nd Marine Division in Al Taqaddum, outside of Habbaniyah in Iraq. And they put us on like tower guard and gate guard, and it's just driving us crazy because we're infantry and we don't want to be doing this force protection stuff. We want to be out on patrol because this is what we like to do. It's like putting a wild animal in a cage and telling them to be good. So eventually we talked them into letting us do the combat operations, do the patrols around the area, and they finally broke and let us, and so we started to do patrols out in the desert outside of this logistics marine base. So as we're doing these patrols, this is towards the end of the tour. They had given me a vehicle called an ASV. And an ASV is like a monster truck with gun turrets, 50 cal Mark 19 grenade launcher on top. It's super cool. It's huge, it's heavily armored, top and bottom. You feel like you're invincible when you're in one. But they had given this to us and the enemy had been watching. So I'm leading every patrol in this ASV and they're watching and they're going, how can we take out this death machine that leads the patrols? So they were preparing a trap for me for me specifically, for this vehicle specifically, and we didn't have any knowledge of it. So we're doing our regular thing, and one day I go out to inspect this truck before we go out on patrols. And as I'm inspecting, I open up the doors, and it smells like diesel fuel inside. And so as I'm looking around, there's a fuel leak underneath floor panels in this side of this vehicle. So I take it to the motor pool, I take it to the mechanics, and I said, hey, can you guys fix this? We got to go out and patrol here in a little bit. And they said, no, we can't fix this. You're going to have to take something else. I was like, really? I don't want to not take this. Like, I feel safe in this. Putting my faith in the armor, you know. And they said, no, you're going to have to take something else. I said, well, what do you have? And they said, well, we got this piece of junk Humvee back here with retrofitted steel plates on the doors. I was like, really? That's all you got? Yeah, that's all we got. So I took it to my platoon sergeant. I said, platoon sergeant, what do you want to do? I said, the ASV's down, and they've given me this piece of junk with light armor. He says, today you're not going to be in the front. Today you'll be in the back of the patrol. So just hang back at the rear, and you know, hopefully you'll be all right. So I was like, roger that, I'm good. I will not lead the patrol this day. The only day in the entire year we were in Iraq. So we're getting ready to go out, and we get mail that day. So two of the guys come up to me, and they bring a letter that they both received from the same person. Both of these guys are not from the same town, but we don't know why they got this letter. But they don't even have names that are in alphabetical order. So like if someone got a mailing list, it wouldn't have been, you know, like, well, these two people I'm going to send a letter to. So a lady from Robinson, Illinois, sent a letter to these two guys, and it had Psalms 91 on it. And Psalms 91 is just an amazing psalm. It's called the Soldier's Psalm. But this day it took on new significance. And they both got this letter. And they brought it to me because they knew I was a believer, and they said, you know, hey, Gifford, take a look at this. This is crazy. We both got this letter. We don't know this lady. What do you think, you know? And so I want to read Psalms 91 to you because I need you to understand what it says before I finish the story. Those who live in the shelter of the Most High will find rest in the shadow of the Almighty. This I declare about the Lord. He alone is my refuge and my place of safety. He is my God, and I trust him. For he will rescue you from every trap and protect you from deadly disease. He will cover you with his feathers. He will shelter you with his wings. His faithful promises are your armor and protection. Do not be afraid of the terrors of the night, nor the arrow that flies in the day. Do not dread the disease that stalks in darkness, nor the disaster that strikes at midday. Though 1,000 fall at your side, though 10,000 are dying around you, these evils will not touch you. Just open your eyes and see how the wicked are punished. If you make the Lord your refuge, you will make the Most High your shelter. No evil will conquer you, no plague will come near your home, for he will order his angels to protect you wherever you go. They will hold you up with their hands, so you won't even hurt your foot on a stone. You will trample upon lions and cobras, you will crush fierce lions and serpents under your feet. The Lord says, I will rescue those who love me. I will protect those who trust in my name. When they call on me, I will answer. I will be with them in trouble. I will rescue and honor them. I will reward them with a long life and give them my salvation. So the guys got Psalms 91 in the mail. They bring it to me, and as I'm reading this, I'm going, man, this is cool. You know, like I mean, it's neat that God has compelled a woman to send his promise of protection for those who love him to these two guys, because these two guys were in my truck every day on patrols. They were always in the lead with me. So we get ready. At this point, like I said, the guys would joke about Gifford's got angels in his truck, but they had started to ask me to pray over the patrols. And so every time we got to go out, we bowed our heads and we prayed. They say there's no atheist in foxholes, and you know, I believe that's true. So I would pray over the patrols, but today we got really that day we got really busy, and I forgot that we all forgot. And so we roll out into the middle of the night. We would drive with night vision and IR headlights and spotlights, and so so we wouldn't be seen by our enemies. And we're driving through the desert, and we're going to put a sniper team up on this plateau. And as we drive up this old sand road, I watch as the lead vehicle disappears into this massive explosion, big mushroom cloud. And my stomach turns inside me, and I just know that those guys are dead. The guys I just talked to, the guys that got Psalms 91 in the mail, they were up there in that lead vehicle, and I'm in the rear today, and I just know that they're dead because this explosion was huge. And so, you're preparing for the attack afterwards. You're preparing for the RPGs and the machine gun fire because this is an ambush. They've taken out the lead vehicle, and you're just waiting for it. But it was late at night, and I guess they decided to go to bed. So nothing ever happened. No one ever fired around. And the smoke blew away, and the dust settled, and everyone got out of the trucks, and they ran up to the front, and the medics up there, and we see this massive crater in the ground. It's just huge. And in front of the crater is what's left of the Humvee. And we get up there, and the whole front end of the Humvee is gone. From the windshield forward is in pieces this big all over the desert. The tires are like 200 yards to each side. It ripped the gun shield off the turret. Just really messed up this vehicle. But everything from behind the windshield was intact, and the guys were all inside, and they were all okay. And they were banged up and bruised and had concussions and sprains, but they were all alive and really with no serious injuries. And so explosives, the EOD explosives ordnance demolition guys came out, and they told us that it looks like they had put 2 anti-tank mines in the ground, and their pressure detonated, and they're a large cylinder with explosive material and a metal plate on top, and when you run over usually there's a rod that sticks up to the center, and when you run over those, the plate forms into a cone, and it pierces armor and just blows up and burns up everything above it. And so they had put those there for me in that ASV. The ASV has different tire placement. The tires are directly underneath the driver and truck commander's seats. And if I had driven over that day in the ASV, I would be dead. There's no question in my mind I would be dead. Everyone in my truck would be dead. They put 2 of them there. It only takes 1. But because of the tire placement on the Humvee, it's like your car, it sits out in front. When they ran over that, it blew straight up and destroyed the engine block and the tires and the fenders and the hood and the bumpers and all that. All that was gone. But everyone inside was okay. And so we get back, and the guys are all, they're patched up, and I remember talking to one of my friends that was in the truck, and I said, man, that was too much coincidence to not be God. I said, the Psalms 91, the letter you got in the mail, the fuel leak in the ASV, I didn't lead the patrol today. The reason you guys had a Humvee instead of the ASV, if we'd been in the ASV, we'd be dead. And he's like, yeah, I know. And man, 2 days later, I called my wife. I went to the MWR tent, and I called home, and I told my wife the story. And she says, what day was that? I said, well, it was 2 days ago. She says, a lady from our church, called me that day, and she said, I don't know why, but we got down and prayed for Caleb today. She worked at a Christian school, and she got her entire classroom down, and they prayed for me and the guys I was with that very day. The very day I had the fuel leak in the ASV, the very day that those guys that were still in the lead that day got Psalms 91, God's promise of protection for those who love him. The same day we forgot to pray. The same day that I didn't lead the patrol when I'd led every patrol the entire year. So God spared me without a scratch. He spared them because of the vehicle. And everybody left that day knowing that God was in control of the situation. And God gives us free will, and he gave free will to our enemies to be able to do that, to be able to put those mines in to attack us. They had freedom to do that, but God was still in control of the outcomes. And so the God of the Bible sent me his word from the Bible as a promise of his protection before I even knew I was in danger. He transformed me through his word, through my time in Iraq, my time in prayer. He taught me who he was. He created a love for him inside of me that I didn't have before because I was pursuing him. And through that, a promise of God's protection for those who love him. So God is in complete control of every situation. It doesn't always feel comfortable. Combat was not comfortable. My time there, the time that I interacted with our enemies and the time that I interacted with the guys I was with wasn't always comfortable. Wasn't always good. I didn't always feel blessed. But God was using those things to teach me who he was. He was using those things to get a hold of me. And once he got a hold of me, I have no reason not to love. So the other part of that commandment is to love others too. And through my knowledge and love for God, for Jesus, my love for others has grown too. And I want to share this story with you so you can see the goodness, the greatness, the sovereignty of God. It's not about me. It's not about what I've accomplished or what I've done. It is all about what God's done in my life. And so I am a humbled vet. Sometimes it's easy to take pride in yourself and what you've done and what you've been through. That's not where it's at. Christ is my King, and he's the only thing that matters. And so if I'm going to live my life in service to anything, it's not for pride, it's not for recognition, it's for him. And so I want to share that story with you because it's impacted my life. I hope it impacts yours. I hope that you see that God is good and he's active and he's present and he's in control. You may be going through some things in your life that are not comfortable, that just straight up hurt, that are miserable. But still, God is in control. And he wants you to turn to him in those times so he can teach you who he is, so he can share his great love with you. Sometimes we get a misconception of who God is. He's not the magic genie that we rub the lamp and when he comes around we go, okay, God, solve all my problems. God is a good and loving God who wants you to know him so he can share himself with you. So in the troubles, in the trials, in the pain, you can still have joy. And you don't have to fear. You don't have to fear the outcomes because God has control of the outcomes. So my challenge to you is to seek him. Not just ask him, God, prove yourself, but seek after him. If you're in that place in life where you're going, I don't know what to do. I don't have control over my circumstances. Give him control over your circumstances. Trust him with it because he's going to create something beautiful out of it. And you're going to stand back and wonder and go, wow, that's who God is. I need to spend more time with him. So I want to share this with you. For all you guys that served, men and women, I thank you for your service. I'm proud of you. And I'm grateful for all those who honor that, who give back to that, all the places that offer the free food and the recognition and the ads and all that stuff, all the churches that always want us to stand up on Sundays and all that. I appreciate that, I do. But still, it's all about God and what he's done, and not what he can do for you now, it's what he's already done for you by sacrificing his son on the cross so he can take away the things that really tie us down. We celebrate freedom, and we celebrate our veterans, and the freedom that comes in our nation through the blood that was shed by them, but absolute freedom comes from Christ and the blood that he shed for you. And that's the only thing that matters, because life is short, but eternity is forever. And He's given you the opportunity to come back and be reconciled with God, and to wear His righteousness, to be clothed in His righteousness. It's nothing you can earn. It's a free gift. Freedom isn't free in earthly matters, but freedom is free when it comes to your sin, and He will forgive those sins today. And so I challenge you to seek after Him, learn who He is, so you can know how to love Him. So you want to give your life for Him, and He will transform you and make you into something amazing that glorifies Him, and at the same time brings glory into your life. So I love you all. Hope this video is beneficial to your heart, and that you can look inward and say, where am I at, and do I truly love God, and do I need God, or am I just trying to do this on my own? Comfort crushes our desire for Him, but I pray that you don't have to go through the pain to seek Him. I challenge you to seek Him today.